The Royal Crest Hotel occupied a full city block in the center of Garrison, and the people who crossed its marble lobby were the kind of people who had always crossed marble lobbies and expected the marble to be clean beneath their feet. The cleaning of it was Maya Lin's responsibility, along with the corridors of the third and fourth floors, and she discharged this responsibility with the quiet efficiency of someone who understood that invisible work was still work, and that the standard by which she held herself was not dependent on whether anyone noticed she was meeting it. Maya was 24 years old and had grown up in the foster system, which meant she had grown up in several different places with several different families. And what she had learned from this was not the thing people expected her to learn from it. She had not learned distrust exactly. She had learned precision, a very fine calibration of what could be counted on and what could not, of which promises were the kind that held and which were the kind that dissolved when circumstances shifted. She was good at reading environments. She was good at noting which doors were used and which were not, which staff arrived with the particular tension of people managing a secret, which guests' behaviors fell outside the ordinary patterns of people staying somewhere for legitimate reasons. She had been at the Royal Crest for 8 months. She had noted several things. She had not said anything about them to anyone because she had no standing in the hotel hierarchy from which to say things and be heard. The silver chain she wore around her neck had been with her since she was found. She had been found at 4 years old by a woman who worked at a shelter in a park near what the shelter's records called an upscale neighborhood. The chain had a small pendant, 2 letters in cursive, L.A., worn to the point where the letters required familiarity to read. She had always called herself Maya because that was what the shelter had written on her intake form. She had always kept the chain because it was the one thing she had been carrying when she was found, and things you carry deserve keeping. She was mopping the corridor near the back service area at 5 in the morning when the door to the linen storage opened, and she saw the woman she understood to be the night supervisor looking at her with the particular expression of someone deciding how to phrase something unpleasant. The phrasing, when it came, was brief. There had been an incident with a hotel guest. The guest had complained that Maya had not been accommodating. The guest was a man named Malcolm Voss, who was listed in the hotel's system as a preferred client, and who had, the previous evening, followed Maya to a service corridor and been refused in terms that Maya had made quite direct. The fact of the refusal was what was being framed as the incident. Roland Pierce, the general manager, arrived before 6 and explained the situation in the language he used for HR matters. Maya had failed to provide appropriate service. She would be reassigned. Her access to the upper floors would be revoked. For the duration of the hotel's evening gala, a significant event, the 30th anniversary celebration of the Royal Crest's founding, she would wait in the supply room. Maya went to the supply room. She sat on the floor with her back against the shelving unit and her eyes on the ceiling. She had been in worse places. She had not, she thought, been in a worse situation, because she had not before been in a situation where what had happened to her was being used as evidence of her own inadequacy. She held the chain. She was still sitting there when the door opened and Victor Alden walked in. She did not know at first who he was. He was 60 years old and wore a suit that she understood, even in her limited experience with such things, to be very expensive, and he had the quality that extremely powerful people sometimes have of seeming to take up more space than their physical dimensions required. He had come through the supply room door because he was doing a quiet inspection of the hotel before the celebration and had found the room unlocked and had opened it to see who was inside. He found Maya Lin sitting on the floor in the dark. He was about to say something. She could see him organizing the thing he was going to say, when the lamp from the corridor caught the silver chain against her collar, and the thing he was going to say did not arrive. He said instead, "Where did you get that?" It was not the question she expected. She said it was hers. He stepped into the room. He said he would like to see it, if she was willing. She was not sure why she was willing. She held it toward the light without taking it off. He looked at it for a long time. His face did the kind of thing faces do when something very large is happening inside them that the face is not sure how to handle. He did not touch the chain. He only looked. Then he said, "There's an engraving on the back of the pendant." "Yes," she said. "L.A. My daughter's name," he said, "was Lila Alden." Maya looked at him. "She went missing 20 years ago," he said. "She was 4 years old. She was wearing a silver chain. The supply room was very quiet for a long time. I was found when I was 4 years old," Maya said, "in a park." He said, "Where?" She told him. He closed his eyes. What followed was not the kind of thing that resolves in one conversation. He asked her questions, and she answered them, and he answered her questions in return, and neither of them said the thing they were both circling, because the thing they were circling was too large to say until there was evidence to attach it to. He was, he said, going to arrange a test. She said she understood what that meant. He said it would take several days. She said she would still be here if she still had a job. He said that was something he intended to ensure. He went and found Roland Pierce. He found him in the way that extremely powerful people find hotel managers, efficiently, publicly, with the specific quality of presence that caused other employees in the vicinity to be elsewhere quickly. He asked what had happened with the cleaning staff and the supply room. Roland explained. Victor Alden listened with the expression of a man going through inventory. Then he said that Maya Lynn was to be returned to her position immediately, that Malcolm Voss was to be notified that his preferred client status had been reviewed, and that Roland Pierce himself might want to consider whether his current role was the one he intended to hold at this time next year. Roland Pierce was still thinking about this when the gala began. Ethan Cole had been watching the hotel's accounts for 2 months, employed by Victor's office to conduct a quiet audit following several irregularities in the quarterly returns. He was 32 years old and methodical, and he had noticed Maya before the audit gave him a reason to, because she was, as he put it to himself, doing the right thing in a building where a significant number of other people were not. He had noticed that she rerouted the supply carts to avoid certain corridors at certain times, which suggested she had observed something about those corridors that the official logs did not reflect. He had noticed that she returned items to storage in the exact condition they had been checked out in, which meant that any tampering would be detectable. He had noticed, on 3 occasions, her completing a task correctly that the person before her had done incorrectly, without drawing attention to the error or to herself. He had found the secondary account connected to Roland Pierce in the 5th week of his audit. He had found the overcharged services and the falsified maintenance contracts by the 7th week. By the time the gala was scheduled, he had most of what he needed. What he needed from Maya was the specific pattern of the VIP corridor usage that she had been observing for 8 months without having a framework in which to report it. He asked her, sitting in the break room 2 days after Victor Alden's visit, whether she would be willing to write down what she had observed. She looked at him. "Why?" she said. "Because it fills a gap in what I can prove," he said. "And because I think you've known something was wrong for a while and had no one to tell." She looked at him for a long time. She was precise about trust. She always had been. She was also, as she sat there, thinking about what it meant that the first person to ask her directly what she had noticed was someone who had come looking for her, specifically because she had been paying attention. She said, "I want to know what it's for." He told her, all of it. She wrote it down. The gala's anniversary celebration was interrupted by Victor Alden, at the moment Celeste Alden, his niece, who had been managing the family charitable foundation for the past 8 years and who had been expecting, with some confidence, to manage rather more of the family holdings in the future, was explaining to a small group of interested investors that the Royal Crest represented the best of what responsible luxury hospitality could be. Victor stood and said that he had some additions to make to what had been said about the hotel's history and its future management. What he added, with Ethan standing nearby with a folder of documentation, was a complete account of Roland Pierce's fraudulent billing practices, the secondary accounts connected to Malcolm Voss's investment, and the circumstances under which a hotel cleaning attendant had been sent to sit in a supply room because she had refused an inappropriate request from a preferred client. Celeste, who had known about the supply room and had not said anything, said from the table that this seemed like an operational matter, better addressed in a private setting. Victor said he had learned recently that there were things which had been kept in private settings for too long already. Roland Pierce left the gala before the main course was served. 2 days later he learned that he had also left his position. Malcolm Voss's attorney received a letter from the hotel's legal department. The DNA results arrived in the second week of the following month. Maya had expected them to take longer. She sat in her room in the boarding house where she had lived since taking the hotel job and read the letter twice, and then put it down on the table and looked out the window at the street for a while. She was Lila Alden, or she had been before someone had taken her out of a park at 4 years old and left her in another park in a city 200 miles away. She was Maya Lynn now, which was the name on her identification and her employment records, and in the institutional memory of every foster placement she had been through. She was also, on a piece of paper, the person Victor Alden had been looking for 20 years. He came to see her that evening. He did not come with lawyers or with announcements. He came with a car and a driver, and he waited at the bottom of the stairs of the boarding house until she came down. They sat in the car, and he said that he wanted to know, before anything else, what she wanted from this. She had thought about it. She said she wanted to know what had happened. She wanted the record to reflect what had happened. She wanted to keep the name she had lived under, because it was the name she had, and she was not going to discard 20 years of living under it because a piece of paper said something different. She said she was not certain what she wanted beyond that yet. He said, "That's fair." She said, "The people in the linen storage, the supply corridor, the booking patterns, your auditor has most of it, but not all of it. I can finish what he started." Victor looked at her. "You've been in the hotel for 8 months, he said. "I've been paying attention for 8 months, she said. He said, "I believe you." The investigation took 3 months. What it found, in the end, was a chain of fraudulent billing that led back to Celeste's foundation and to a set of payments made 20 years earlier that connected, through 2 intermediary accounts, to the private security firm that had managed the Royal Crest's event operations in the year Lila Alden disappeared from a hotel garden. The payment had been made to a man who worked for that firm. The man was dead. The payment was documented. The story of what had happened to Lila Alden at 4 years old did not have a clean ending. It had an ending that was honest, which was different. A woman who had been taken had been found, and the people who had benefited from her absence had been identified, and the record said what the record should say. Maya stayed at the Royal Crest, not in the same position. Ethan had been right that what she was actually doing was more than the position she'd been hired for. Her title changed. Her access changed. The supply room was converted into a decent rest space for the overnight cleaning staff, because Maya had mentioned that it was cold in winter, and Victor had thought this was a reasonable problem to address. He did not press her to call him anything. He did not ask her to move into the family house or take on the family name or perform any version of a reunion that was more about his needs than about what was honest. He came to the hotel when he came to the hotel, and he asked about her work. And once a month they had dinner in the hotel's restaurant, and he told her things about himself, and she told him things about herself, and they were slowly and without ceremony, learning what they were to each other. Ethan was often in the restaurant on the same evenings, working late, and sometimes he joined them and sometimes he didn't, and this too was worked out without ceremony. Some losses take 20 years to find. The finding does not undo the loss. What it does is give the loss a different shape, one that can be looked at clearly, understood accurately, lived alongside rather than against. Maya had lived alongside loss her whole life. She was, she thought, reasonably well equipped for living alongside a truth that was complicated. Most truths worth finding were. Thank you for watching. This channel is no longer supported by ads, and these stories continue because people believe they matter. Patreon is a quiet way to support the work with early access, story previews, and small moments of input before each tale is fully told. On screen now is a preview of the Patreon page. If you'd like to support the channel, the invitation is in the first pinned comment down below. I'll see you in the next story.